Most teams pick between ECS and EKS for exactly the wrong reason. They pick EKS because it's Kubernetes, and Kubernetes is what the big companies use, so it must be the serious choice, right? And then 6 months later, they've got a team of 8 engineers spending half their week babysitting a Kubernetes cluster they didn't need to run 12 containers. So today, I'm going to give you a decision framework, not a Kubernetes is amazing sales pitch, so that by the end, you'll know which one is right for your team. And it might not be the one everybody told you to pick. Quick context if we haven't met. I've spent about 20 years as an architect, and a big part of that job is exactly this kind of decision. The one that looks like a small technical choice, but quietly sets your operating costs and your hiring needs for the next 5 years. Because that's what this really is. ECS versus EKS isn't a checkbox. It's a commitment to a way of operating. And the wrong commitment is expensive, not in the AWS bill, but in your engineer's time. So let's actually break it down. What they are, where each one wins, what it really costs, and a simple framework to decide. What are we even comparing? Let's get the definitions straight, because the marketing blurs them. Both ECS and EKS are container orchestrators. Their job is the same. You hand them containers, and they decide where those containers run, restart them when they die, scale them up and down, and connect them to networking and load balancers. Same fundamental job. ECS, Elastic Container Service, is Amazon's own orchestrator. They built it, they run it, and it only exists inside AWS. It's opinionated. It does things the AWS way, and it integrates tightly with the rest of AWS out of the box. EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, is managed Kubernetes. Kubernetes is the open-source orchestrator that the whole industry standardized on, and EKS is Amazon running the hard part of it for you, the control plane, so you don't have to. The thing that confuses everyone, Fargate. Now, before we compare them, I have to clear up the single biggest source of confusion, and it's Fargate. People think the choice is containers on servers I manage versus Decision 1 is the orchestrator, ECS or EKS. Decision 2 is where the containers physically run. On EC2 instances you manage yourself, or on Fargate, which is serverless, meaning AWS runs the underlying machines and you never touch a server. And here's the key. Fargate works with both. You can run ECS on Fargate or EKS on Fargate. So the question isn't just ECS or EKS. It's also, do I want to manage servers at all? For most teams I work with, the answer to that second one is no. Fargate removes a whole category of work. Patching, scaling the node pool, capacity planning. You pay a bit more per unit of compute, but you delete an entire operational job. Keep that grid in your head. Because a lot of ECS versus EKS arguments are really arguments about Fargate in disguise. What it actually costs? Let's talk money, but not the money you think. The headline difference. EKS charges you for the control plane. ECS does not. With EKS, you pay about 10 cents an hour for every cluster. That's roughly $73 a month. Per cluster, just to have it exist, before you've run a single container. ECS has no such charge. The orchestration is free. You only pay for the compute. Now, $73 a month is nothing for a real company. So if that were the whole story, who cares? But it's not the whole story. There are 2 traps. Trap 1. Extended support. Trap 1. That 10 cents an hour rate only holds while your Kubernetes version is in standard support, about 14 months. If you fall behind on upgrades and slip into extended support, that price jumps to 60 cents an hour. That's around $430 a month, per cluster, 6 times more, purely as a penalty for not keeping up. And teams that chose EKS without the discipline to upgrade regularly walk right into it. The real cost is people. Trap 2. And this is the one that actually matters. The expensive part of EKS was never the $73. It's the engineers. Kubernetes needs people who understand it, to upgrade it, secure it, debug it at 2 a.m. That's either a dedicated platform hire or a chunk of your senior engineer's time, every single week. So when someone tells you EKS is basically the same price as ECS, they're looking at the AWS invoice. The real bill shows up in your payroll and your on-call rotation. That's the cost difference that should drive your decision. So let's make it concrete. When should you pick ECS? Pick ECS when you're an AWS first shop and you intend to stay that way. ECS assumes you're all in on AWS, and it rewards you for it. IAM, load balancers, logging, networking all wire up with almost no glue code. Pick ECS when your team is small, say under 15 engineers, and you don't have anyone whose actual job is running infrastructure. ECS lets a small team ship containers without learning a second, enormous system on top of the cloud they already have to learn. Pick ECS when your priority is shipping product, not building a platform. You'll have services running in days, and your on-call will be dramatically simpler because there's just less machinery that can break. The honest summary. For a large number of companies, maybe most small to mid teams, ECS is the right answer, and they talk themselves out of it because it isn't the fashionable one. ECS is the choice you don't have to justify to your future self at 2 a.m. Now the other side. Because EKS genuinely wins in real situations, and I don't want you to underbuild either. Pick EKS when you need portability. Kubernetes runs everywhere. AWS, Azure, Google, on-prem. If avoiding lock-in is a real strategic requirement, or you're running across multiple clouds, Kubernetes is the common language. ECS only speaks AWS. Pick EKS when you're bringing an existing Kubernetes workload to the cloud. If your team already runs Kubernetes on-prem, migrating to EKS is the natural path. You keep your manifests, your tooling, your mental model. Pick EKS when you need the ecosystem. The Kubernetes world has a tool for everything. Advanced deployments, service meshes, operators, a massive open source community. If you need that depth and customization, ECS will feel limiting. And pick EKS when you operate at serious scale or complexity. This is real Kubernetes. A single EKS cluster can now run up to 100,000 worker nodes. If you're building a large data platform or a multi-team internal platform, that ceiling and flexibility matter. Now, if you've been researching this, someone's told you Kubernetes got way easier, and they're partly right. AWS launched EKS Auto Mode, which automatically handles a lot of the painful parts: provisioning compute, storage, scaling. You can stand up a cluster with basically one command. And it's genuinely good. It narrows the operational gap with ECS, and it costs roughly 10 to 12% more on top of your compute for the convenience. But, and this is the important part, Auto Mode automates running the cluster. It does not turn your engineers into Kubernetes experts. When something breaks in a way the automation doesn't cover, you still need someone who understands Kubernetes concepts, pods, services, networking, RBAC, to debug it. Auto Mode lowers the floor. It doesn't remove the ceiling of knowledge your team eventually needs. So it's a real improvement, and it should make EKS more attractive than it was 2 years ago. Just don't let it trick you into thinking the team knowledge question went away. It didn't. So, ECS versus EKS was never really a technology contest. ECS isn't the beginner option, and EKS isn't the grown-up option. They're two different bets on how your team wants to spend its time. ECS spends less time on infrastructure, so you can spend more on product. EKS spends more on the platform to buy you flexibility and scale. Pick the trade-off that fits the team you actually have, not the one you imagine you'll be. If you're weighing this for a real system right now, and you're on the fence, that's exactly the kind of decision I dig into on this channel. So if this helped, subscribe and stick around. The next one is one of my favorites. The 10 AWS architecture mistakes I see absolutely everywhere. And there's a good chance you're making at least 2 of them. See you in that one.